name's Skye Augustine. My Halkomium name is Huasyanyan. I'm the daughter of Swielt and the granddaughter of Kwatlamat. My family is from the Staminas Nation. I'm also a marine scientist. And today I'm going to share with you a story about a day that I had spent the last 5 years dreaming about. And on this day, it was a time that I got to connect who I am and where I'm from with my love for the ocean and my passion for inspiring youth. So the day that I'm talking about was earlier this summer, and it was on a small island on the west coast of Canada. And it started at about 8 o'clock a.m., and the sun was still low in the horizon. And I was sitting on a rough driftwood log, looking out over a wide beach. And I was feeling pretty nervous as I watched 3 boats pull up to the edge of the beach. And I could hear the gulls crying around me. And I knew that on those 3 boats were all of the participants for this day's clam camp. And I was really worried because I wasn't sure if this day would end up being everything that I hoped it would. Would I be able to inspire these kids from my community to reconnect with their heritage, with who they are and the places that are important to our community? Would I be able to help these kids be so inspired by the ocean that they wanted to protect it like I did? Or would we, was it this day going to be too little and too late? And will our oceans continue to become deserts of places that we can't live on or eat from anymore? I had to quickly push all of these worries aside as 16 kids, 3 community knowledge holders, a handful of scientists, and my grandmother all piled off of the boat, making their way over slippery rocks with green algae and the ebbing tide, and walked toward me. They were walking toward me, ready to learn about traditional clam gardens and all sorts of science. I quickly had a little bit of relief as energetic bodies spread themselves out across the beach, and I could hear laughter with kids picking up heavy shovels and digging for clams as they practiced pronouncing sounds in Halkomium and as they learned the names of species. I even heard some squeals as angry clams squirted water onto kids' faces. Brian called me over. He was like, "Skye, come here, what is this?" And he pointed to a creature that was tucked between 2 rocks, and it was purple and large and squishy. And I was taken aback. It was a sea cucumber. And the fact that it was a sea cucumber wasn't odd, but this was the first time he'd ever seen one. Just a generation ago, sea cucumbers were a daily part of our community's lives. And they would have often been part of our diets. And yet Brian was here, and he was a 14-year-old kid from my community who lived just 20 minutes from the ocean, and he was seeing a sea cucumber for the first time. It was about an hour and a half later. The tide had gone out quite a bit, and we were nearing the lowest tide of the day. And as each moment passed, I could see a wall emerge from the very low tide. This wasn't just any wall. It's a wall that's composed of thousands of cobbles of rocks that have been purposefully built into a terrace that traps all sorts of rocks and chunks of shell and creates a garden. And this is a garden that's tended by First Nations along the Pacific coast of Canada, much like you would tend your garden, except instead of growing carrots, you grow clams and other intertidal foods and animals. And so as the tide was going down, I was watching this terrace and this wall emerge at the very low tide, and just it would emerge a little by a little. And as I watched it, I went and sat down next to my grandma. Now, my grandma is a person who commands respect. She wears evidence of a tough life. As a girl, she grew up on a tiny island in the Chemainus Bay, and she spent her days helping out on the family oyster farm. And she would sometimes have to hide behind the wood stove when her mother was on drunken rages. And she also got to spend a lot of her days exploring the island and the coast and eating all sorts of different foods around her. She's a tenacious and passionate woman, and she raised 7 kids without any running water or power. I can't imagine trying to do the laundry. And she's also an artist. She's a university professor, and she's one of the most opinionated and loving women that I know. And so as I sat next to her, and we watched the tide go out over these incredibly important features, we saw a girl. Her name's Natasha, and she's about 9. She was there with her sister for the day. And she picked up a cobble that was quite big for her tiny arms, and she carefully walked out toward the wall. And as she got near the wall, you could see her carefully trying to pick just the place that this rock would fit really nicely. And as I watched her do this, and as I watched her choose by herself to engage in a practice that our community and our elders have been doing for centuries, it made me realize just how much these young people can change our future. Can you imagine if other young people like Natasha are able to harness all their tenacity and passion and clean up our beaches, clean up our oceans? Wouldn't it be amazing if I could go to a clam garden in a few years with my kids and it would be alive and flourishing? My grandma looked at me with tears in her eyes, and she said, "Skye, this is the way it's supposed to be. This is the same beach that I dug clams on. This is the same beach that my mother dug clams on." Heichka, granddaughter, and Heichka to you for listening and hearing this story today.